And we're live. Welcome to the last session for today from DLearn or DLRN, however it's pronounced. I am AK from Virtually Connecting, and I'm joined this morning, afternoon, evening, midday, wherever you are, with a lot of interesting folks, both virtual and local. We're going to do a quick round of introductions, starting first with the on-site participants, and then Lisa and Rosie.
So I'll start. I'm the on-site buddy for this session, and my name is Patrice Fresco. I'm an instructional designer at Cornell University in Ithaca, New York, and thanks everyone for joining us today.
Hi everyone, thank you for joining. And I'm next to Prof. Patrice. What's up, right? My name is Alyson Indrunas, and I used to work for the State Board of Community College and Technical Colleges in Washington State, and I was just hired to work at Middlebury College as an instructional designer.
David Jones from the University of Southern Queensland in Australia. I'm a faculty member in the School of Teacher Education and Early Childhood.
Hi everybody, I'm Lisa Chamberlain, and I am actually Alyson Indrunas' real buddy, but I'm virtual today. I'm from Walla Walla Community College in Washington State.
And hi, I'm Rosie Nash from the University of Tasmania in Australia, and I'm a PhD candidate looking at pharmacy education, but I feel like I'm on the cusp of personalised learning plans, MOOCs, and trying to get e-portfolios into my area, people around in my area. Yeah.
Most excellent. All those are awesome topics. I'm a big Open Ed and MOOC fan. I probably write too much about MOOCs in my blog. Right before we went live, we started having a conversation about the session that just ended with Jim Groom. We actually had Jim earlier on today. He gave us a quick preview of what he was going to talk about. So now that it's all said and done, what do you think? What are your takeaways? What were the big wows?
Well, just wow. That's all I can say. The session was amazing because it started, and I'm sorry I don't know all the names of the people who presented. You can look that up on the website. We started with a person from Georgetown talking about changing a learning design degree and talking about how we educate people who are a part of EdTech. And that was brilliant and really refreshing to see, too, because there are so many limited programs for education as it relates to technology and pedagogy, and I think that that type of degree will erase a lot of the barriers that we have right now in between IT, e-learning, teaching and learning centers, and all the things that I'm finding that people suffer with, especially here at this conference. Then we switched to the director of, I don't know her exact title, but she was the leader of the California Consortium, and that was very interesting to me as someone who has been a part of a system, and I'm very interested in systemicity. So the idea of a California system as very similar to Washington. And then it switched to Adam Kroom, who did this amazing job with talking about the indie music movement and how that connects to EdTech. And it was this brilliant history lesson. And so I'm gonna beg him, or everyone beg him to post that blog, because I know it was a paper, and that was really interesting in how it connects to domain of one's own. And then Jim Groom just got up with basically talking about his group being the black flag of EdTech. And so I can just like annihilate this week by talking about the entire, it was just amazing. But I'm going to be quiet and just say that if you only make time to watch one session, I mean, you want to watch them all really, except for mine, that was really powerful stuff. And it connected, I think, to what I've been hearing a lot today. So, and Patrice was in there and heard a little bit of it.
Yeah. Well, I missed Jim Groom, although I've heard him speak before, and he is totally amazing. But yeah, just one of the things that I think her name was Pat from the California Community College system. She shared some open resources that they've created, and there were two of them. One were open resources for students starting in the online studies, and the other was a I forget how many weeks it was, but it's an online program for faculty who are going to be who are new to online teaching. And so we can actually share both of those resources on Twitter.
In terms of takeaways, I mean, the two that I took from Jim's talk was, one was his talk of both and. So it was what Pat was talking about, this large corporate enterprise thing that our large organisations have to do. There has to be that space, but too often that space consumes everything else, and the indie stuff doesn't get any space. So for me, the challenge is the combination, creating both those spaces. But then the last question Jim left us with was, if we're going to create these independent spaces, students are going to go out there, why or how or should we still be marking them? Is it their space if we're marking? That's another interesting question coming on.
A Davidson student wrote a blog post about that.
That's where Jim came from, and Andrew was in the room. So, so Jim pointed to Andrew and raised that question. So that's the next step. If we have the indie space, what changes does that imply, require from all of the other assumptions that we've made?
Do our virtual participants have any thoughts on that?
I wanted to ask a question if I could. So I listened to part of the streaming of the talk, like the chat with Adam and Jim before they started, and the analogy, the music analogy, I just loved so much. And I wanted to know, they were talking about virtually connecting as punk rock, I think, and I was wondering whether they came up with anything for portfolio or MOOCs and that sort of thing as well. Did they have any other analogies they used?
Gosh, you know, I feel the music was really powerful to me. Basically connecting it to a history, which I'm very interested in portfolios as well, and that's really the idea of the history of one's ideas. This connects, I think, I'm a fan of the Federated Wiki, as Mike Caulfield talked about it this morning in his keynote. It's this idea of bringing together ideas over a series of time. And for me, that the last session was basically, how do we do it as an institution? How do we do it as a system? How do we do it as an organization? And how do we do it as an individual? And I think creating that and space and getting rid of the or, I think helps. But no, they didn't really. I didn't really see one. But I'll think on that, and I'll remember something at 2 o'clock. Tonight, I'm sure, in the morning.
You can Twitter me then.
Well, my takeaway was the analogy of the punk was that the indie movement is, like punk, was a reaction to the mainstream. And look, MOOCs and e-portfolios perhaps are almost mainstream. Perhaps
not everywhere.
Mainstream practices, no. But I mean, I'll talk as somebody in an institution, as a student, whose e-portfolio disappeared 2 years ago, and without any warning. So it's still owned by the man and gets taken away. It's not something that I own, which perhaps the man wants own, and that sort of thing is more punk than perhaps e-portfolio. I don't think it's quite that simple a distinction, but
yeah, it feels very complex to talk about it, but I like this idea of that it seems that there are a variety of choices, right? So in a portfolio, when you're assessing or grading a portfolio, you really can pick and choose what you're going to be grading, so to speak, of the student's work. But the whole thing is there, and it's an individual piece, and I think it's that do-it-yourself moment, and virtually connecting. I really see it as this definite DIY punk move here that you're doing, because we're sharing ideas that people pay a couple $100s for a webinar, right? You get those emails and it's like, yeah, great, I would love my faculty to be able to see that, but I can't pay $400 per faculty member to watch it. And then here it is, volunteer effort. I mean, if that's not punk rock, I don't know what is.
I think Jim Groom actually referred to this in the same way when he was at the session earlier today. Right? Yeah.
This whole conversation reminds me of something that happened on my campus that I saw when we had a class going badly, actually. The students sort of went rogue and created their own Facebook group to survive. It was sort of a survival group, and they called it Teaching Themselves. But they did. They found, Jim talked about it as a shadow IT, but it became shadow teaching, I guess. But they will find a way outside, if they have to, and if we let them and we get out of the way, they'll do it. And it sort of circles around all of this, you know, in the same way that faculty or staff or whoever will find a way, so will they.
That
Lisa.
Go ahead, Rosie.
Oh, Lisa, Lisa, I was going to say, like, I've seen that at UTAS as well with our medical students, and we were trying to engage them and get them into the Blackboard and discussion boards and stuff to learn and teach, and they were totally on the side in their Facebook page, just going crazy nuts for it. But they didn't want to be in the venues that we were providing for them. Sorry, David, I interrupted you.
I was just going to follow up. In the course, the Bachelor of Education courses that we teach at our institution, it is often a race in the start of semester to see which student is going to set up the official group or the student official group for the course. It's not what we've got set up, but it's what the students, who's going to be first, who's going to have that space that's set up. And I've observed this year in particular that there's tensions amongst the students within those groups, because there are students who think other students are just being stupid and they shouldn't do those things, and they're not asking the right questions, they're not making use of the resources that are there at the moment. And so there's even tensions within those groups, but they're not official, they're shadow, they're feral.
It's quite interesting. One of the things that I wanted to go back to that really perked my ears up a little bit is this whole, if I understood it correctly, a degree in learning design that was mentioned.
Yeah, you know, I probably don't have the title correct, but it was looking at learning design in particular, and then my mind sort of took off a little bit because he showed a building basically and talking about the different levels, and that made me think about, because in one of the building there was a watchtower, and you know, so you have this beautiful building with 3 levels, and then my thought kind of went away on, okay, who watches the watchman? Right? Like if we set up that structure and you get a degree in learning design, who's in that tower saying that, you know, make it so? And so, you know, will that kind of degree, and it's at Georgetown, so of course it's going to be, you know, well respected, but you know, what happens to what's going on in the basement, right? If I can connect it to what Jim talked about and Adam talked about, you know, what about the indie folks sitting in the basement working on their own thing? Will they be asked to come to the upper floors? So, I mean, I'm thrilled that we're looking at different ways of giving degrees for education. I mean, I just earned a master's degree in education, and so I saw a lot of potential with how we could just burn that whole structure down and rebuild it. And of course, learning from the history, but there were just so many things that, you know, like for instance, I was taking a class on community colleges, and we have 34 community colleges in my state, and we didn't go visit one of them. One of them was a half a mile away from the campus. And I just thought, what a missed opportunity to not even go. I mean, and again, we could have walked, we could have taken the bus. Transportation wouldn't have been an issue. And so, anyway, I'm talking a little bit too much, but I'm very excited about that degree.
So I know that some of us are instructional designers or learning designers. Some of us may have degrees in instructional design. How are those falling short at the moment? So that's one of the conversations that, in terms of comparing what are we doing now versus what are we proposing, where's the differential, where's the delta?
You have to ask the presenter, because he established, or he presented the proposition that they weren't training the people they needed to employ. So, but he didn't go into detail about why. The 3 unique combinations that he talked about for his program was research, faculty and applied innovation. And so I imagine if that's the 3 unique things, then somewhere along there is perhaps the shortfall.
Question to answer, because every instructional design program is different, as is every person that goes through. So somebody with an education background that goes on to get an instructional design degree might have, you know, all 3 of those pieces, where, you know, somebody else with a different background, you know, may not. But I think, you know, one of the points that he was getting at was trying to overcome this divide between, you know, the IT people and the pedagogy people and the faculty. and kind of creating more of a synergy between those three pieces where we're all working together. And I think you said you have to cross boundaries and collaborate to really make change.
Indeed. Anybody in
Can I add to that? Just like being excited about analogies today after the music analogy. What you've just described is exactly the problem we have in healthcare with nurses, doctors, and pharmacists. So there's a really complex health system. We have a really complex education system. Yet we fail to collaborate to get the ultimate for patient-centered care, and then if you want to say it the same way, student-centered care or student-centered learning. I just think it's just amazing how close the relationship is.
That's interesting. I wonder if you could apply a similar model to that.
Yeah. I think we've got a lot to learn from the medical or the health system, and also education, and vice versa. Like, I think there's a lot to be said for that.
How are we doing on time? How are you guys feeling?
It's almost 4. What time is it? The next session at 4?
I think we're done, actually. We're not going back until tomorrow, but I just want to make sure you guys are feeling good. I don't know what you have planned after this.
I do have to meet my crew at the end. I thought everything was done today at 5.
Oh, okay.
If maybe we'll consult the schedule here. But Rosie, I'll just riff on what you just said a little bit about healthcare. I think one of the things that I witnessed when I was helping nursing faculty at a community college was this challenge of the fact that they are working professionals and they teach for it's a side gig for a lot of them. It's something that they love it and they love to do it, but they're nurses, they're working nurses, and so if we could just change the context, right? Instead of having the students sit and hear a teacher lecture in a lab, why not have that space in the hospital, right? Why? I mean, again, this is out there kind of stuff, but I see a lot of challenges with clinical nurses in particular having a difficult time between teaching, helping people, and just trying to balance all of the requirements of what we're asking them to do with curriculum builds and assessments. So I think a lot of what I've heard today is thinking a little bit not just about the digital space, but where we value locations of learning. And that's not an easy question, and I don't know. But I think it's really refreshing to hear people talking about the same challenges, especially if you're an instructional designer or you do this kind of work. Listen to these sessions. It'll be like therapy, because you'll see that people are challenged with the exact same things you're challenged with on your campus, but there's probably only like 1 or 2 of you, or maybe you're just the one that does all the work. And so that's really been valuable to me, and I'll share as much as I can once I've processed.
So I just checked the schedule. There was a 5, so we're missing that. Okay, so
all right. So Alyson, can I just add one quick thing before we wrap up on that? At Hertzer last year in July, George Siemens was on a panel and speaking, and Helen Chen, and they were talking about the whole idea of the system, and how currently our vice chancellors in Australia particularly, they reward the pushing out of publications and the bringing in of money. But I sort of stood up and said, but my professional practice isn't actually valued. Like, as a pharmacist, I'm better to not work in my practice and push out 2 extra papers or get another grant in this year, because that's what my promotions are all based on. So until the hierarchy recognise the value of practitioners and practicing, like teachers certainly in Australia, I don't know if it's worldwide, we've got a real blockage there, I think, and a real area that needs to be worked on. But I'll get off my high horse now. That's my thing.
I'm riding that high horse with you. I love it. These are good problems to have. These are really good problems to have.
Just picking up on that, I work in teacher education, and there is a universal problem and argument ongoing about should teachers be educated in schools or should they be educated in universities. And the point is, there isn't either one of those solutions has its problems and limitations, some practical, some real. There is no one solution. It's about a balance, and it's creating space for both and, coming back to Jim's talk, rather than one or the other. And too often the discussion is about one or the other.
And it's that connect.
But what if?
It's the connect that Alyssa had with the community college example that she gave. You know, taking a course talking about community colleges and not even visiting one.
Do you know what I want to add to what you've just said, David? Sorry, I'm taking over this conversation. I'm really worried, but I just think the whole role of reverse mentoring and that we undervalue how much our students can teach practitioners and vice versa. And I think, that underpins a lot of what's going wrong. Like, we should be starting with first years and teaching them how to be reflective practitioners and teach them to be self-directed learners, and using John Hattie's work to be a visible learner is essentially what we need to be focused on with our students. They need to know how to be self-reflective, and then they can help to teach our older practitioners how to connect virtually and use all of the great online resources that are available to them, and use ePortfolio and that sort of thing to continue learning themselves. And if we continue to cycle and do that for teachers, pharmacists, whoever's in a professional discipline, I think that's the solution. But maybe I'm being ambitious with that statement.
Nothing wrong with ambition. So I'm looking at the clock, and we're coming up to the half-hour mark. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the broadcast, and we can wind down offline or off-broadcast. I would like to thank everybody, both virtual and physical, who have come with us to participate in this virtual connecting session. Some really interesting stuff. I think we should keep talking about it on Twitter and blogs and continue to develop these ideas. I like everything that I'm hearing here. So thank you all, and more virtual connecting goodness tomorrow. Hope to see you all there. From AK and everybody,
Thanks, everyone.
good night.
Bye.